One thing amazing sales leaders all have in common is the ability to hire good people. If you want to deliver results, it's not the technology, it's not the product, it's the people that will impact revenue over all of that. Hiring and onboarding salespeople is also one of the hardest things to do. Our next guest, Will Fuentes, is a founder, a sales leader, and a great coach who shares some tips on how to be great at hiring and onboarding amazing salespeople, coming up next on Coach's Corner. Super excited to have our next guest on Coach's Corner today. Will Fuentes, founder of Maestro Group, someone with 20 plus years of experience in sales and sales leadership, and a dad whose son just beat him in one-on-one basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Will, how are you doing today?
I'm recovered from that loss. I did beat him the next game, so we're all is right with the world again.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on. Maybe to kick us off, can you share a little bit about yourself, the Maestro Group, and maybe like one unique thing that no one really knows about you outside of work?
Myself, I have a law background. I went to law school, ended up in retail because I was a really bad lawyer. Ended up working for Best Buy for a long time, started a software company focused on clienteling in retail. From there, I transitioned into assisting B2B SaaS companies, accelerate their sales, and really started focusing on the science of decision making. So the Maestro Group really is focused on the science of sales, right? So how humans make decisions, not getting to a yes, but just getting to a decision. So we look at behavioral psychology as well as industrial organizational psychology to help and assist our clients, get shorter sales cycles, higher win rates, and higher ACVs. One thing people don't know about me, maybe they do if they followed me for a bit. My favorite job of all time was as a meat cutter at a butcher shop. Did that for a very long time, almost like 7 or 8 years. I did it through my last year of high school, all of college, all of law school. And then after law school, I would go back during the day before Thanksgiving and the day before Christmas to assist because I loved it so much.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's definitely unique. Every time I ask that question, the response is always make my guests seem a lot cooler. That's pretty sweet. Man, I'm really excited to talk to you today. Honestly, the main reason is I'm also someone in B2B software that came from a retail background, and I'm a big believer that those foundations that the Best Buys and the AT&Ts of the world that have been around for decades and decades have built. When it comes to leadership, best practices, hiring, science, things like that, they've laid the groundwork. There's a lot of brand new startups that think they're inventing the wheel, and when you're fortunate enough to come from a behemoth like that has those bones and structures in place, you get to start from step 7 instead of step 1 in SaaS.
100%. Yeah.
So definitely excited to hear how that translates. So our topic today is really focused around hiring do's and don'ts and onboarding. I think there's the first 90 days of someone's employment at a job, I think are really telling, not only for that person and where they're going, but from what the company's going to get out of that rep. So I'm really excited to pick your brain. Hiring sales reps. It's one of the hardest jobs to hire for, I think, because if you're hiring somebody that has any experience, they know what you want to hear, right? They know what to say. What are the key traits and skills you look for when hiring a new sales team member, and why are those skills and traits important for success?
Yeah. So I'm looking for resiliency from a trait perspective. So people call it grit, resiliency. I'm looking for intellectual horsepower, how quickly they can process a lot of information, synthesize that information, and then relay it back to me. Coachability is a massive trait for me, how coachable they are. And then, from a skills perspective, how good are they at asking questions, and how good is their executive presence? That's really going to be it for me, to be honest. And we've developed a 5-step process that we have our clients, that we teach our clients, or we can run it for them if they like. And it really checks all those boxes and it ensures, and one last thing. Yeah. That they're strong writers. It's actually pretty important. And so it checks all of the boxes so that they can assess all those skills and traits.
coachability sticks out to me. That's something I don't care if you have 15 years of sales experience. If you're coming in and you're not coachable and um, you're not like willing to learn, I think that caps growth, right? And can cause other issues. I think that's a really powerful trait that goes sometimes unnoticed or unlooked for when someone has a ton of experience that I really enjoy. On the flip side of that, so like what are common mistakes hiring managers make when recruiting sales professionals, and maybe what are some ways to avoid those mistakes?
Yeah. So number one, I think often people look at past success as like the strongest indicator of like whether someone's going to be successful in their org. And I think that's a big mistake, right? Like there's so much that depends on like where that success came from. Like, you know, uh, what was the product market fit? What was the organization? What was the onboarding like? What was the accountability like? What were the tools that they had? Like there's just so much that goes into that. Number one. Number two is I often will talk people out of hiring industry specific. And I say, if someone's got a really good process, if someone's very smart, if someone can understand concepts quickly, and then, articulate those concepts in the simplest terms to others, that is way more important than someone who spent 30 years kind of getting to know the industry, right? And so like I think like often hiring managers just kind of box themselves into this idea of who the right candidate is and don't open their mind to the diversity that exists in the sales profession in terms of what can make success, right? And so like one of the things I encounter is people will be like, oh, I want my salespeople to be like you. And I'm like, you do not want your salespeople to be like me. You want your salespeople to be, yes, process driven. You want your salespeople to be smart. You want your people to be accountable to themselves and coachable. Those are all things you do want. But you also want them to be authentic to who they are. And if you're looking for a personality type or whatever it is, you're going to pass on some really amazing candidates that can help accelerate, because I have met some incredible neurodivergent salespeople that like just, if you met them, you wouldn't be like, oh, they're sales, but they just are great. I've met some people that are shy, that are incredible in the sales environment. I've met other people that are like me, that are full of freaking energy, right? That are like going to bring it and they're successful. I've also met failures along all of those lines as well.
I think that to me was the aha moment when I moved it over to SaaS. Was like, wait a minute, salespeople aren't all these loud, extroverted, in your face, really that old school sales culture. Like having a diverse team of like cultures and behaviors, and like you mentioned, authenticity, introverts, extroverts, like the makeup of a team can really accelerate the performance of a team when it's that diverse, because everyone isn't just the same cookie cutter, rep that can't learn from the other person because they're the same. So I love what you said there, especially the behavioral piece. Like I think a big miss, definitely. We've done it over here. We've hired reps that have sold into a similar industry that we want. We're like, oh my god, they're gonna be a killer. And they
Yeah.
come over and they're not, and that resonates for sure. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think sales orgs, we're going to go off the script, look for, like, make that mistake in general?
Yeah. I mean, listen, often sales revenue company building is about de-risking, right? So there's filters. So I worked for someone years ago who their filter was Ivy League. They wanted people who had Ivy Leagues. They wanted BDRs, right, that had Ivy League education. And it was like, you understand how many like people leave Harvard and want to be a BDR? Very few. So like you're minimizing this pool, right? And so like people just are, but he's like, but I'm de-risking because I know how smart they're going to be, or et cetera, right? And so it's like that's why I think. And so I'll often talk to people like, I want someone who's been in the industry for a long time. And I'm like, why? So they know it. And I'm like, no, they know what they know. And that's the problem, right? Is like I would rather have someone, I would like, again, my de-risking is how coachable they are and how smart they are, right? Like if they're very coachable and they're very smart, then I think that like you can learn any industry. We've run the gamut. We've had 200 official engagements. I've worked with another probably 500 companies unofficially, right? So that's 700 across a ton of industries. And we have to spend time very quickly getting up to speed in terms of what it is that they're doing. And so I can tell them, like, listen, people are capable of understanding your business quickly if they're smart and dedicated to doing that. And that's what you need to find, not someone who's like been doing the same thing for 30 years. Because, in retail, we always just have a saying, you've always done what you've all, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
De-risking for sure. I think managers are lazy, and it's not the manager's fault. It's the organization that's enabling that manager that's stretched. I think we want to hit the easy button, like, holy crap, this person's got industry experience. I can skip step A, B, and C in onboarding and get them right up on the phones or get them demoing. And like, we're going to talk about onboarding in a little bit, but I think a lot of hiring processes, people are just lazy and they see that as an easy button. I can skip some steps. And, to me, I don't blame a manager that doesn't have any time because their org hasn't enabled them in the right way. But in the same token, I think, especially if you're in the executive leadership listening to this, really think about hiring, and then what holds hiring up to me is onboarding. If I know that there's this strong onboarding program behind me, I may take a risk on somebody that's got all the behavioral things but no experience or not industry experience. So I'm with you there.
So you bring up a really interesting point to me, and I'm sorry, I know this isn't on the script of things we were supposed to discuss, but it's like, I wrote this post, I don't know, maybe 4 months ago. And it was based on Taylor Swift's song that she's like, maybe it's me. And I don't know, I should really like Taylor Swift, but that day that I heard that song, I was like, wow, she's really self-aware of this. And like, I wish more teams were self-aware of the fact that like they didn't hire people to fail. They hired people to succeed, but they didn't think their way through, like, what is the impression that I'm giving them through the hiring process, right? Like, how process driven are we as an organization? How urgent are we to their questions and their requests? How urgent how do we schedule things? Like, how easy does this all, and so often the onboarding starts from the moment that you're bringing someone into your hiring funnel. It really does, in terms of the culture that you're telling them that you are creating and what you'll accept. It happens in those moments. And there's so often that a candidate will ask a question and someone won't get back to them for 48 to 72 hours. But then when they're hired, they're asking that, hey, how come you didn't get back to the client in a timely manner? And it's like, listen, the problem is you. From the very beginning, you showed them that that's acceptable. And so people just don't actually stop to think about that, right? So really having this defined process of how you're bringing them through the hiring funnel, because that's how you start to set up that culture that you then are going to really just ingrain them with during the onboarding. And again, if your onboarding is here's a laptop, here's a list, here's all of our decks and stuff, go read. Well, all you're really doing is forget about setting them up for failure, but really what you're telling them is hey, this isn't that important.
And that's just how the human brain thinks. You know what I mean? That's just how it works. And I don't think you need to be, a publicly traded company or a company with a ton of funding to have a good hiring and onboarding process. You may not have all the fancy resources and an enablement team and an LMS and all these things, but you could still run through an extensive onboarding without all those things. And I think, man, you set the tone. I like how you said that from day one when someone applies to your business. You mentioned culture in there in that last bit, and I think it's a good segue into something I find either captivating or really it turns me off, is the culture of a sales team. Each level of your sales organization has a culture. So manager A and his 6 reps, they got a culture of their team. And the director above them, they have this much broader culture. And I think the best sales organizations I've seen have really strong and unique cultures. How important is cultural fit in the hiring process for a sales team? And what strategies can you do to assess if that person's going to fit the vibe of your team?
Yeah, so I think it's super important. And it is part of our process, a cultural fit interview, right? And I tell the candidates, this is as much an interview for the organization as it is for you. You're going to sign on to this. Can you work for these people? Do you like them? Do you feel like this is a place where you're going to be successful? When you're failing and they're holding you accountable, are you going to be okay with that because you respect them, right? That becomes really, really important. One of the other things I tell people is hey, if you've got a culture of coaching, you need to coach that candidate throughout the interview process. Stop them when they're doing a role play to coach them. Stop them when they're answering a question and coach them on how to do it better next time they get asked that question, right? If there's a culture of urgency, you need to act with that urgency, right? And see how they respond to that urgency back. And so it's super important, I think, to that culture isn't something that just happens in the final interview or whatever, and like, wherever you have in your process. But I normally tell people you should put it near the end, like just make sure they're a good candidate first, right? Because like you want a little bit of diversity on your team, right? And so like if you're knocking people out because they're not the best fit initially because they don't fit the mold of everyone, I actually find that to be myopic. But ensure that like the culture, the things that matter, the things that are the base, the foundation of your culture. And for me, it's always accountability, right? It's accountability, self-awareness, and coachability, right? Okay, cool. So I'm going to ask questions around self-awareness. I'm going to coach them. I'm going to hold them accountable to the things that they're sending me and producing, etc. throughout the interview process. Why? Because I don't want it to be a surprise when they join my team. I just don't want it to be a surprise.
I'm gonna ask you a question that we ask everyone that we've ever interviewed at Ambition.
Okay.
Because I'm so interested to hear how you respond and then how you analyze this question.
Sure.
You being the expert here, I'm definitely intrigued. So we ask everybody, and I'll tell you the why after, but if you had to put yourself in one bucket, somebody that hates to lose or loves to win, what do you relate with more? What bucket are you putting yourself in?
I hate to lose.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Now, why do you put yourself in that bucket?
Because for me, losing is not just like what the outcome of the event is. It's for me not to have gained something from it, right? And so for me, if I'm participating in something and I'm not gaining something from it, that to me is like a loss, right? Like forget about everything else, right? And so I'm just so focused on like what is the incremental value that I've added to my life, to my performance, to whatever it is from participating in this thing. And without that, that to me is like what a loss is, right? So like you walk off the field, you didn't win the game, but like, hey, like, you know what? You learned some things, whatever else. That's amazing. You just lost. Like there's nothing that gets me more upset than literally having wasted my time gaining nothing from what I've just done.
Yeah, I mean that's you're hired. No, the two things that the reason we ask that is one, I want to see how fast they respond. If they respond the way you did, I know it's a real response. They didn't think about it. Like they really identify with that trait. But then two, to me, people that hate to lose, those are people that I think can hold themselves accountable. You mentioned holding themselves accountable. Like if you ask me, hey, Brian, are you an accountable person in an interview? Like no one's going to say no. No one's going to say no. You know what I mean? So like, how do we really get past that in my opinion, a sensitive question? And to me, the hate to lose people hold themselves accountable because if they're not at quota, I know that they have that inner drive to want to get there and I don't need to push them, right? If they're not where they want to be or they lost the competition or they had a bad month, like I know that that's killing them more than it's killing me. So I can do my job as a manager and coach and encourage because I know they're holding themselves accountable already. So that's one of our favorite questions. And
can I give you one of my favorite?
Yeah.
So I ask. So two questions I love to ask in the first interview is what's the last thing you learned? And so I love when someone comes back to me and says, do you mean professionally or personally? Right? Like that's like number one is clarification. Great sales skill there. I asked you a question. It's nebulous in terms of what I'm looking for. So you're going to get some clarification. That's a skill for me already. Right? So, and I always say whatever you want. And so like, if they can come up with something quick, that's amazing. That means they're a learner, right? That means they're out there trying to get better. And the second question I love to ask is, tell me about a time you failed, but I don't want to hear his journey. I want to hear about an utter failure you've had.
I like that.
And the reason I want that is I want to hear, like everyone's prepped that question of like, and then I won the big game, or then I won the big deal, or that. No. Tell me about a time you tried something, it just did not work out, and literally that was you lost. And you remember it still eats at you. I can remember a recipe that I tried that was garbage. I learned nothing from that outside of the fact that I can't cook that thing.
That's
Like,
authenticity, right? I think
yeah,
that question ties to your other point of just being authentic.
yeah,
Because I think sometimes, yeah, it may catch someone off guard, like you said, that their canned response that they've worked on because they know that question's coming in an interview, they can't use. So I like that, especially for hiring salespeople,
yeah, 100%.
because you
Uh,
never know when you're going to your negotiation call, the C-suite comes in and hits you with some extremely blunt question or objection, and how are you going to respond?
that's right.
They don't want the fluff. They'll smell right through that. So it's a really good question. Um, we're running out of time. That normally happens on here.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, because we get folks like us could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about onboarding. We
Yeah.
dove heavily into hiring and what to look for there, and you definitely dropped some gems. Um, what are some best practices around effectively onboarding new reps to ensure they hit the ground running and feel part of the team?
Number one, pre-onboarding. So ensure that you have a pre-onboarding process. You run the sales cadence, you run marketing cadence, same thing. Hey, we're excited that you're going to be joining us. Here's some of the people you're going to be meeting. Here's what the first day looks like. Here's what we hope you get out of the first day, etc. Number two is don't overload them with lessons. The adult brain cannot process 3 hours, 4 hours of call. Break it up and break it up into chunks for them and give them like the outcomes that you're seeking so that they can hold themselves accountable to that. But also, if you've got alpha people, right, that really want to outperform, they may just be having a bad experience because they feel like they haven't accomplished enough. So be like, hey, you're in a good spot. If you've learned these things, you got your laptop set up, you met with IT, you got like, those are all good things, right? Number two is ensure that you are meeting with them at the end of every day and at the beginning of every day. So beginning of every day, here's what you can expect. Excited, what questions you have for me. At the end of the day, hey, what did you learn today? Hey, next morning, given that you've had some time to sleep on what you learned yesterday, what are some questions you still have about the company, the product, whatever else it is? Why? Because the adult learner, that's how they actually get those connective tissues to remember things. Otherwise, they're going to forget. And then you're checking in them again at the end of the day. The other thing is, if you want them to be process driven, have a process, show it to them and be like, that again is going to set the culture of how you operate as a company and how you expect them to operate as salespeople. If I just throw you willy-nilly into something, then how can I expect you to run a really clean process in sales? Because like that's not what we do internally. And so it really, really matters because you're setting the tone from the first day, like obviously, but even before that, in terms of how you're leading them into this thing. And then you can leverage that as you're coaching them near the end of the way. Hey, you know how we ran this process? That's how we expect you to treat our prospects. Clear communication, follow up, ensuring that things are process driven. And that's how you start to create kind of that sales like culture that you're talking about that really leads to great outcomes.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot. We have one of our other guests, Wesley and Whitaker. She talks about coaching the way you sell, like making sure those two things make sense. It's basically what you're saying too, with how you're treating your people and your respect for your process. That translates exactly to what you want that rep to do with their prospects. So, yeah, we
Oh,
have.
can I tell you one more thing?
Yeah,
Never skip steps in onboarding, right? And what I mean by that is like if you feel like if your onboarding includes sales training and someone's got 30 years, they still should go through it. You know why? Because you're going to hold them accountable to the standards that you've put into that onboarding, and you need that baseline. And you can't hold someone accountable if you never taught it to them, even if you assume they already know it. And so people do that all the time. And I'm like, I'll go back to the rep and I'm like, don't you know this? Is like, no, they told me I didn't need to do it. It's like, what are we doing? Why are we holding this person accountable with this standard that we didn't even like walk them through?
we call it. We have this term flyby coaching. Just flyby coaching. Like, hey, Will, you're like even beyond onboarding. Like, you have your regular weekly one-on-one. Hey, Will, you're at quota. Everything good? Yeah, cool. We're gonna cancel today. I gotta catch up on some stuff. And then it's like, cool. That one time you do it once, then you do it twice, then you do it twice, and now that person goes, well, coaching and development really isn't that important because my one-on-one gets canceled every week. Our something we say over here is the one-on-one is the most important meeting on the calendar. It doesn't get canceled. We'll schedule negotiation calls around one-on-ones here. We'll schedule we do not move one-on-ones because having that system and those gates in place defines everything, right? It defines everything. So Man, Will, this has been fun. We could go on forever.
Yeah.
How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about Maestro Group or want to reach out?
Yeah. So a couple of ways. So they can go directly to me, Will at maestrogroup.co. I'm happy to chat to anyone about anything about on sales. They can follow me on LinkedIn. Every Friday, I put out a newsletter called Fuentes Fridays that hits on sales topics, something that I found interesting in the world, something that I found funny, and I share a quote that I gave my son. I leave my son a quote every single day, and so I share one of the quotes that I found inspiring in that, and they can always reach me through that as well. So those are going to be the two mechanisms, or they can go to our website. But just come to me. If you're going to go to the website, just come to me.
Awesome. Will Fuentes, thank you so much, man.